Dustin.
What's up, Pooper?
Not much, man. Been a crazy summer, been a crazy week. Crazy.
Yep. Okay. Well, what's going on? Like work stuff?
Life. Oh man, work's been crazy. Life's been crazy. The world's been crazy. What hasn't been crazy? Honestly, that's a better question. What's going normal?
That's true.
We have come here.
We know what you're here for.
You're
here for one thing and one thing only.
That's right. You don't want to hear about our lives or our hopes and dreams. Hoops and dreams. So
Hoops and dreams.
Let's get into it. Deadpool and Wolverine.
I told you, you're not welcome here. You're not welcome anywhere. Now get the fuck out of my bar.
Just give me one more drink and then I'll leave.
Hi, Peanut. I'm gonna need you to come with me right now.
Look, lady, I'm not interested.
All right, well, I'm sort of on the tick, so upsy daisy. Here we go. Oh, whiskey dick of the claws. It's quite common in Wolverines over 40.
You don't want this.
Unless you want to take a deep breath through your fucking forehead, I suggest you reconsider. I'm about to lose everything that I've ever cared about.
Not my fucking problem.
Is that what you said when your world went to shit?
Come again.
This Wolverine let down his entire world.
Want to talk about what's haunting you, or should we wait for a third act flashback?
Go fuck yourself.
I don't know anything about saving worlds, but you do.
Trust me, kid, I'm no hero.
You were an X-Man. You were the X-Man. I am soaking wet right now.
Boys are so silly.
This is what I'm talking about. Big slow motion action sequence. Who knows if you live or die? Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.
All right, everyone listening who clicked knows what this is, but we're going to do the thing and read the credits. So, directed by Sean Levy, written in part by Ryan Reynolds, Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, Zeb Wells, Sean Levy. This is the 34th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, now that Disney owns Fox and has the rights to this character. This is the long-awaited Disney Deadpool movie that was long speculated about whether it would be allowed to be rated R, whether Ryan Reynolds would still be Deadpool, and what exactly, what the nature of a movie like this could even be, considering the nature of Deadpool as a film character. So the movie stars a bunch of people that we won't spoil right off the bat, but obviously the main cast is Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, Emma Corrin, Marina Baccarin, Rob Delaney, Leslie Uggams, and Matthew McFadden. So for those who have not yet seen the film, I'll just briefly touch on the plot. If you would have just heard the trailer, maybe you've seen the trailer, but in the movie, Deadpool is essentially recruited by the TVA. If you saw Loki, the Time Variance Authority, the big bureaucracy that controls the flow of time, they appear and essentially offer Deadpool a chance to join the sacred timeline, the MCU timeline, because his universe is dying. Yep. And they say, but you're special. So, you could just leave it. And he's like, oh, no. and
Yeah.
decides he's going to find a way to save his timeline, which involves trying to enlist the help of Wolverine to do so. Problem, of course, is, Logan has died, and so he has to find a variant of Wolverine, which he does, and convince him to assist him in his quest. And the road movie begins, and lots of curse words are said, lots of surprise.
Is spilled.
Yeah, lots of blood is spilled, and lots of guests make surprise appearances, and lots of inside studio baseball is joked about.
Yep.
All right. What did you think of the movie, Dustin? Just as for people who, because you saw this today, right?
Today. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I saw it today.
I saw it last night. Yeah. What did you think of it for the uninitiated?
Yeah. So to clarify how uninitiated I am, I have not seen Deadpool 1 or 2.
I thought you saw one.
Nope. I haven't seen neither of them. I don't care to. I will not be seeing either of them.
Interesting.
I passionately hate the character of Deadpool. I think he's a worthless waste of space in the Marvel universe, and have no affection for him whatsoever. This movie was fine. Deadpool was annoying and grated on my every last nerve. But there's enough here that even someone like me could enjoy it. Now, here's what I want to say up front. Like, okay, you're probably thinking like, okay, you hate Deadpool. Why did you see this? 2 reasons. Hugh and Jackman.
Yeah.
And those are the reasons. Also, I had heard something, I think it was a quote from Feige, and he said something like, in terms of the impact on the Marvel universe, if Endgame was a 10 and Infinity War was a 9, Deadpool and Wolverine is an 8. And so I was like, oh, well, then I have to see this movie then. So it was really 2 reasons. It was Hugh Jackman and it was that statement. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I'll go see it. I think it's middle of the road for me. 3.5 stars. It's fine. But it's annoying in places and overly long in other places. Overly jokey, and plot wise makes sort of sense most of the time. It's a simple plot, but it's also like needlessly convenient at times, which we can talk about. And the idea of the cameo in this film, of course, was expected, but I think began to really grate on me in the third act. But I really enjoyed a lot about the movie, even if there were some major detraction, like so. And I don't want it to sound like the movie is a failure, because I think the movie's fine. And if this is your cup of tea, you'll dig it. This is not my cup of tea. So it's akin to like asking my mother to watch a Western. It's just not her cup of tea. Like, there's only so far that your sensibilities will allow you to appreciate the film. And so that's where I'm at with it. And we can talk more about specific reasons when we get to spoilers, but I do think it's a mostly a well-made movie, and mostly succeeds at the things it tries. So there you go.
I went into this movie with moderate expectations, having liked the previous films, but not loved them. Always wanted more from them, because Fox seemed unwilling to invest in their potential. There's multiple jokes in the first and second movie about how cut rate the budget is, because they can't get any clearance for certain actors. Yeah. And it's like, what can they do except for make jokes about it within the film? but it's like a real thing. It's like, yeah, what's up with that? Like, can we get some more mixing, please? And that was just always one of the problems with the Fox movies in general, was like, we just have a limited roster of characters, even though they don't, but whatever. So Disney solved that problem here, of course, just having a larger catalog, a bigger universe to play with, lots more money to throw around. So the film has a larger budget. It's like a $200 million budget. Because it has, I hate to make it sound like money made the film better, but money solves certain limitations of the potential of this character. A fourth wall breaking character has certain limitations if you put a ceiling on the budget, to me. So I think we got better cameo appearances in this movie than obviously the previous Deadpool movies, which ended up enhancing the story for me. But most importantly, I think that what the studio did well here was allow the film to go there, quote unquote, with the violence, with the language, especially fourth wall references to things that most films and studios would prefer not to acknowledge, like their current critical ratings of their recent films being directly. I think Deadpool says to Wolverine at some point, like, you're joining at a bit of a low point.
That was one of the biggest laughs from me in the movie. Yeah.
It's just refreshing to hear, like, somebody was willing to say it, and enough executives were willing to let that stay in the film.
Yeah. Right.
References to, I think there's a reference to Hugh Jackman's divorce, which
was really unexpected,
shocking, but interesting when so to me, it's a theater recommendation. I think but like you said, like as often is with movies, if you want to go see it, you probably will enjoy it. If you don't want to go see it, maybe you're not going to enjoy it. Right. It's rare that we come on here and say, hey, this was totally mismarketed and like it's not what you think it is. If you've watched the trailer, or I don't know how you can have an online presence and not have seen marketing for this. Yep. So it's exactly what you think it is. So if that looks good to you, go see it. That's what I wanted. I got it. I think if that's you should see it this weekend with friends or some kind of group at a high volume time. I saw it at a regular theater. And I think to me, it elevates the previous two films just because the first one was okay. The second one was a little better. And I think this one's much more fun than those two are. So it makes those two worth watching because at least we go up, Sure. Yeah. And it elevates the current lackluster MCU. And it's a fitting, I'm assuming, ending for this whole creative endeavor that's been earnestly and semi-adorably championed by Ryan Reynolds, who just wanted to make a fun movie and had a lot of shit in his way. So to me, the movie delivered. I was entertained. I had fun. I laughed. And an important factor for me, at least, I accepted and bought the premise. I accepted the premise from the get-go, which means that the gimmicks that it employs resonated with me beyond being just gimmicks. Sure. It didn't take me out of the film so much because to me, like if like cameos and stuff take you out of the movie, it's like, but Deadpool himself, like how'd you get past the doorman? So in that sense, it delivered for me. I was thinking earlier, like I'd probably give it a 3.5, but that feels low considering what it set out to do and what it did achieve. So I think it could have been maybe a little tighter, but I was pretty. There's a few transparently fan servicey moments, but it's again in a film like this, I kind of warrant it because for me, it's just I took it straight away as a non-serious comedy that happens to have rippling continuity, probably. So from the get-go, silly things like and again, the referential stuff helps. Like I think the line is, "What in the MacGuffin is that thing?" Yeah, right. And so. Right away, you accept like we're going to hear a few sentences about what this strange device that a writer invented is.
Yep.
A time ripper.
Time ripper.
What does it run on? Like, is it what kind of engine is that? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's a time ripper.
Yeah.
We made a machine that can rip time.
Yeah, it can destroy an entire timeline.
Yeah. So yeah, how did you? Here's a strange question. As it's not even a big deal, but how did you find Matthew McFadden?
I thought
Mr.
he was
Paradox.
good.
He's silly.
I thought he was appropriately silly in a movie like this. He's
similar, more serious, but similar on Succession. He's just He's great. I love Matthew McFadden.
I thought he was good. I thought he was set up to be the big bad, and so I was actually kind of glad and surprised that he was just kind of like an inconsequential like nuisance, and not necessarily anything more than that. But I really enjoyed his performance. Thought it matched.
I mean, those are my thoughts on the movie. I think it's doing well. It's setting a bunch of records. You know, there's some negative reviews, but I think most of them are pretty positive. You know, and I mean, time will tell, I guess, how we judge the movie, but obviously everything about the movie from like a business perspective was done exactly right. I mean, we've said this before, but you know, getting Hugh Jackman involved was probably super. I'd love to know what he was being paid, because I'm sure like everyone in the room acknowledged like the movie's going to work if you're in it, you know, like, and if you're not, because I think they even admitted like they struggled to figure out what the story was going to be until they got Hugh to sign on. Yeah. Because without that character, it's just like, well, what are we even going to build the film around?
Right.
You know? So yeah.
I think, you know, we'll in a minute, we'll talk more specifically, but it may sound a little bit like I'm going to come down on the film and be really harsh. But there are some significant issues that I have with the film, but what I want to stress is like, I do think the film is fun, and I was not disengaged. So all that to say, even me, a Deadpool hater, I found enough in here to latch onto. So yeah, I would agree that like, if you have an opportunity to see this with an audience and this is your cup of tea, definitely go. If you have a chance to see this with an audience and maybe you're on the fence, like I think your statement is true. If you want to see it, you'll like it. If you don't want to see it, you won't. And if you're on the fence about seeing it, you're going to be on the fence about the movie. And that's, I think, a weird superpower that this film has is like, you already know if you're going to like it. But the film is really, like, it's self-aware enough to know why you came into this movie, which is, hey, I came to see goofy comedy and Wolverine. And that's all anyone ever really came into this movie for. And it certainly achieves those things. So that's where the movie itself is a successful film. My nitpicks with it are the things that hold it back for me from being a 5-star film, a perfect film. These are the things that start to, you know, add up as not great, but like they're not going to be the same for everybody. Everybody, like some people are going to listen to me talking, oh, I didn't have a problem with that at all. And some people will have more of a problem with it than I will. So it will change depending on your personal taste. But like, you know, one of the things that I had trouble with at first, and it slowly settled with me, was this idea of like the MCU as an entity. And we've talked before about this is a little bit like a TV show, and each entry into the MCU is an episode of that show. And one thing about TV shows that we all know just sort of inherently, even if we've never thought about it, is those shows, every show on television is highly strategic about because in most shows there are different directors for every episode, but those directors are told, and like, this is the tone, this is what we do on this show, like match what we do. And then those directors work within the confines. Now, the MCU is a little bit different in that each director can put more of their own spin on it, and that's encouraged, right? A James Gunn film is vastly different than a Jon Favreau film, but those things are somehow, they work together even though they're different.
Yeah.
And the reason they work together is because they have a similar tone and similar sensibilities, even if the presentation of it is different. Like, I think if you stripped away, like if you just read the script, I think you would find that they're very similar. But by the time the director puts their stamp on it, you start to see all of the different, like the differences between them. And like the different flavors. But for me, Deadpool is, again, it bothered me at first because I'm thinking this does not adhere to the Marvel tone. This is drastically different, more different than anything we've ever seen in the MCU. Just in terms of that first scene, which on one hand, I really appreciate that first scene opens with Logan. A direct reference to the film Logan, and hey, nope, he's still dead. Like it was as if Ryan Reynolds could see the writing on the wall that every nerd was going to push up his glasses and put the pencils in the pocket and say, actually, Logan should still be dead. And if he's not, then it ruins the entire film and my childhood. And he's like, hey, I'm going to cut you off at the pass, bro. He's dead. And so instead, I'm going to craft a silly dance sequence / fight to open the film using Wolverine's skeleton.
We're gonna desecrate his. I know he's dead. I checked myself, and then I desecrated his corpse.
Correct. Which is like dark enough that I think that joke is fine within the MCU framework, but by the time he does start like using Wolverine's body or skeleton as a weapon, and then you have like this very bloody and violent intro, it totally sets the tone for the film. Yeah. But right up front, I'm going, this doesn't feel like the MCU.
See, and I was like, my smile got bigger with every dick stabbing.
and mine literally, like from the beginning, I was like, oh, the cute. And then as it went along, I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, and I hope the rest of the film isn't like this. And it wasn't. The film has way more heart than that.
Sure.
Would lead you to believe. But I literally thought, I'm in for a bad time here, because I'm just watching it going, like, in any other scenario, I'd be fine with this. But I already hate this character. Again, like, divorce me from my previous feelings about the character. I'm just judging from frame one to now. I hate this character. He has not stopped talking, and I do not find him funny. And everything that's happening here is off-putting in the MCU. And it feels as if, I mean, imagine an episode of like your favorite sitcom, Seinfeld, whatever. And suddenly there's an episode where, George murders Kramer and rips his skeleton out. It's like, that doesn't, even if they were like, oh, it's a dream sequence, the whole episode's a dream, it'd be like, but that doesn't fit. You know what I mean? Like, this doesn't feel like somebody stepped into an episode of this show and took it to a place that it wasn't meant to be and broke it. And that's how it felt. It felt like you just broke the MCU and did something with it. And we've always, like, throughout the years, we've talked about how we've encouraged the idea that they give filmmakers more freedom to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I totally buy that. Like, I believe that. I think that's true. But I think that I was so off put at that because I was like, they've broken the MCU. And, like, granted, I think the MCU is too bloodless, but it is. But, like, that's what the show is. And so now we've taken it into a direction where it feels like it doesn't belong. And so I hated that first scene. and hated everything about it. And like I said, it got better. Now there are people who, like yourself, that have no problem with this. And then there are people who are going to have going to be more sensitive to it than I am. And they're going to say, this doesn't feel like the MCU throughout the film. And they're not going to have any part of this. I'm in the middle, but like, I hated it up front, and then it grew on me because I was like, oh, well, that's just what this is. Like, it is the MCU, but it's also not, because like very clearly it's not. We're not within, like, yes, we're in the void, but we're not in anything about the MCU for the most part. Like, it exists in a Fox world essentially. Yeah. And so once I keyed my brain into like, we're actually in the Fox world. Yeah. Then I'm like, okay, cool. We're fine. Let it do what it's going to do. And then later, by the time we get into what feels more MCU-ish, if you noticed, the gore was less. Like I felt like it started to settle into a Marvel-ish place. And then anytime it got Fox heavy again, it got bloody again. I wonder if that was on purpose. And so anyway, all that to say, this is just an example of like, you know, your tastes will dictate how you respond to this. For me, it was initially bad. It got fine. And so like, again, it's going to sound like I'm really ripping on the film. I enjoyed the film overall, but that first scene was very shaky for me.
Yeah, I'm on the opposite. I was hoping and expect, like, because for me it was to consider the alternative, like, for not that I have like a lot of reverence for this character or anything, but I understood the concerns of anyone who was like worried that the Fox acquisition would sanitize this character, who of all characters would benefit the least from a sanitizing. Sure. Like, you can make a Punisher movie with PG-13, just imply a lot of stuff. It's really hard to make a Deadpool movie otherwise. So for me, it was like I was showing up and I was like, okay, I'm expecting lots of violence and stuff and all that. So it's exactly what I was looking for. The question, I guess, because for me, I think it helps, especially this movie doing financially well, opens a lot of doors for where I think Marvel's trying to go or wants to allow themselves to go, which is if we can convince the studio that this can make money, then characters like Blade or like certain other like if, you know, the Punisher, for example, like there's other characters where we can have a little bit more latitude to be a little edgier with characters that might merit it. And give a little more agency, because the big criticism of the MCU right now, well, it always has been, but definitely right now, is that it's all too similar. And I think that, you know, that's part of what was refreshing about this, was not only does the material harmonize and you know, refuse to salute the canon. It like actively parodies it and I don't know, moons it. I don't know how else to, what are the metaphors?
Sure. Yeah.
So it worked for me, but the lessons from this movie should be taken with much context forward. Like, you know, you can't do this exact same thing with really any other characters. That's part of what I think makes this one a unique experience, because, you know, like the proverbial Blade movie, like you couldn't have Blade doing this exact same thing. You can just have Blade, you know, cursing a little bit more and, you know, doing some grim things, but a Blade movie wouldn't warrant, I was going to say this much blood, but, you know, human blood. Anyways.
Sure.
He's a half vampire.
It wouldn't warrant this tone.
It would be right.
Yeah. It'd be a different tone, even if it's still as gory or profane.
More crude,
it would still be what it is. And like I think that's where your specific tastes and especially the superhero genre are going to dictate your response to it, because I'm looking at it going, well, if Deadpool cannot exist in a PG-13 world, like I've heard this said that like, hey, in order for a Deadpool movie to be good, it has to include this violence and this, like crudeness. Then I say, then the character's weak, because then because you've just said the character can't exist in a specific setting. And to me, that feels like it's a weak character.
It's definitely a weak character.
Sure,
I'll agree.
But I often go back to like, but bear in mind, there have been crossovers in kids animation with Deadpool, and those have been generally well received, and zero blood. So I'm like, so is it really that this character needs that, or just that people want that? And like, that's the big question, because you take any character, like even if we keep it in the Marvel world and say, Spider-Man, like you can do your bright colored poppy high school Spider-Man, but then you can also do something that's more like Spider-Man Reign, which, I know people are split on, but like that's darker and edgier, or any of the like illustrations by Gabriel Del Otto, who often depicts him in like this like twisted gargoyle type fashion. He's a little bit creepy and exists in the shadows. He's got slender eyes like Batman. The strength of a character is he or she can be reinterpreted over and over and over. And especially this is true of the superhero genre, that, you think about Batman, for instance, if we jump over to DC, the difference between Adam West and Robert Pattinson is vast. The difference between Adam West and Frank Miller is vast. And so being able to reinterpret characters and say, well, this one's for 6-year-olds and this version's for 30-year-olds, that proves the resilience of a character, that the character at his core is not affected by whatever the setting is. You look at the Ninja Turtles, they can be bright and poppy, or they can be a little bit more mature. And that's just kind of, The Last Ronin versus Rise of the TMNT or whatever. It's like they can do all these different things. And so to me, I think the strength of Deadpool would have been to say, hey, we don't have to have that. If Marvel, if their tone is this, then we'll just match that tone. And it would have been as simple in a fourth wall breaking character for him to look at the crowd and say, hey, this is really bloody, but I'm going to put the PG-13 goggles on you. And he puts a pair of glasses on the camera, and suddenly like, just know that there's blood, you know, and like, okay, fine. And that would have been a thing. But regardless, like, again, I'm throwing this out there, but it was not a problem as the film progressed. But that first minute, like that first scene, I wanted to call attention to it. Like, it will dictate, at least because it does set the tone for it, it'll dictate some of how you feel about this film. Yeah. So just know that if you're like me and you're sitting there going, this breaks the MCU, it doesn't. It's fine. That first scene is shocking, but I think it was supposed to be shocking. Mm-hmm. But just know that as it progresses, it doesn't feel as shocking anymore. Maybe it's because you become desensitized to it or whatever. Yeah. And like, I don't have a problem with violence anyway. So it was very easy for me to get desensitized to it. I'm just looking at it going like, man, the last thing I saw was from this world was like, what? Freaking, what was the last Marvel movie? What was the last Marvel movie?
The last one was Guardians.
Guardians. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Was that right? Okay.
What month is it?
I have no idea.
I'm so old.
Guardians was over a year ago. Was it really been over a year since the last Marvel movie?
Hold on. No, wait a minute. You're right. Guardians was over a year. Wow. This is insane, Dustin. Look at us.
I can't think of what the last Marvel movie was.
It's finally happened. The last one was the Marvels. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So Guardians of the Galaxy was Blast-May.
Yeah, okay,
I'm
gotcha.
just having a senior moment.
I knew Guardians was this year. I was like, how is this possible?
No, you're right.
So the whiplash from the Marvels to this is severe.
Yeah. Yes,
and
it is.
so and yeah, so there's that. But yeah, man, I don't know. So, but that's just like one thing, and like we can talk more about spoilers if you want to. I don't have a whole lot to say, but like we can talk more in the spoiler section about some things. But I wanted to call that out again because you may be sitting in the theater, tomorrow when you go see this and going, whoa, on that first scene. It's fine. Bear with it.
All right. Let me go check on my kid real quick, and then we'll do some spoilers. By the way, I don't know if you can hear it or not. Dishwasher works.
Hey.
It just came back on.
Wow.
It just turned on one day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, what?
Good. That's good.
Like,
It's a miracle.
I loaded it and it ran. I was like, okay, well,
sweet.
This probably means that my house has horrible wiring, and it's probably a bad thing,
or it's haunted.
Yeah, right. I had to cut my palm open and put my blood into the detergent.
Animal sacrifice.
Yeah, mix it with the whatever cascade.
Midnight ritual with a mask. Yeah.
Yes.
He chanted over
Nostradamus.
Gregorian chants.
The chant would be like the dishwasher, like the
the priest is throwing the dishwasher detergent. The power of Christ compels you.
I feel like all of this is somehow offensive to somebody.
I'm sure it is. It's fine. There's a dishwasher technician at his home right now listening to this going, that's not what I do.
That's not how it sounds.
I went to school for this. You jerk. I'm in such debt. And you're gonna make light of me?
I'm in such debt.
Want to do some cocaine? Hey, cocaine is the one thing that Feige said is off limits.
What about Bolivian marching powder?
They know all the slang terms. They have a list.
Even snowboarding?
Even disco dust.
White girl interrupted?
Even forest bump.
Do you want to build a snowman?
Yes, but I can't.
All right, so spoilers. What particular spoiler did you want to discuss? Because I just have general, like, whoa, that was cool things.
Yeah, same. I was just gonna say, Wolverine mask, dope.
Okay, yeah, I could take or leave that, but I understood that would matter to some people.
It looks goofy in close-ups.
Yeah.
I didn't care for it in close-ups. And part of that was whatever treatment they did around the eyes.
Yeah.
Because it was clearly the mask and then it was cut out around his eye shape. And then under that was black, but then his eyes were white, but larger than his actual eyes would be. So I was having trouble figuring out what's the purpose of the cutout if we're not seeing skin underneath or pupils.
Yeah.
So it's a little goofy in close-ups, but there's that sequence that's like the old boy fight sequence, where I was like, my eyes were just drawn to Wolverine because of that mask. I was like, yes, this is Wolverine. This is what I've wanted for 20 years.
It was really cool. The only thing I didn't like was that in the splash panel, he looked like, I mean, he probably was, but he was a little too CG looking.
CG, yeah.
So
and that is what it is, I guess. Sure. But and that may be part of the reason why the close-ups don't look great because it's just too CG. But in wide like that first moment where he takes the mask and puts it on, I was like, yes, come on, Hugh Jackman, do this for me. So that was dope. Cameo world, what did you like?
So the biggest reaction, like the biggest the person I was most glad to see was Wesley Snipes.
Okay.
When he walked in, I was like, whoa, because I was expecting Fox. I mean, I'd heard about Elektra.
Oh, really? Okay.
Someone was like, her name came up enough times where I was like, there must be merit to this. I actually predict, I didn't like say this to anybody, but like I did consider beforehand, like they're probably going to get Chris Evans and they're going to do a fake out where he's actually Johnny Storm because that would be funny. And most people probably forgot that he used to play Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
And so when he showed up, I wasn't thinking of that. I was like, oh, it's a Steve Rogers, but he must be like not a very good one or something. Yeah. And then when he says flame on and he flies, I was like, oh, right. I thought it's one of those things where like I was surprised and then I remembered that it occurred to me already. Yeah. So I was like, cool. It validated my instincts as a studio executive.
Yeah. See, I thought for sure they wouldn't do that. Like they wouldn't do that. But but then I called it because he you don't see his face at first, and then he comes. It's like then you do see him, and Deadpool's like, "Oh my gosh!" And he calls him Cap. He was like, "We're right behind you, Cap." And then the first thing that came to my brain was, "Who's Cap?" And I thought that's what he was gonna say was "Who's Cap?" And I was like, "He's Johnny Storm." And so I called it before the reveal happened, but it never occurred to me that they could or would do that. So I was surprised by that, and that was nice. I mean, I guess I guessed it before the actual reveal happened, but I was still surprised. And it was seconds before the reveal, so it doesn't count. The biggest reaction in my screening was Wesley Snipes.
Yeah. Because I mean, I don't think anyone ever thought that, I mean, any of these characters, but like of all these characters, I'm surprised that Wesley Snipes agreed to come back as Blade. Mostly just because that was New Line. That wasn't like 20th Century Fox. So it wasn't even really the same studio. Yeah. And so it just didn't occur to me to even think about that. You know?
I did have a fleeting thought that might happen because of the Ryan Reynolds connection. But I didn't actually expect it. Like that was the thing. Like I had thought about a lot of these things, but I didn't actually think any of them were going to happen. I just thought we were going to end up with a bunch of alternate Wolverines and Deadpools. I didn't think we'd actually get all of these other variants. And then I thought we'd get actual characters. Like I thought we'd end up getting at least a few of the core X-Men.
I thought we would. Yeah.
So that's where my mind went, was all the cameos were going to be Scott and Jean and Storm. Yeah. But that's not where it was. And that's fine. I think the film's better for it, for not including them. So I'm fine with it. I thought for sure we'd have Patrick Stewart in here at some point. Again, glad we didn't. Didn't expect to see like Toad and
was that Ray Park?
I think it was, yeah.
Wow.
And what's the guy that played Juggernaut? Whatever his name was.
Not the same guy from The Last Stand.
Oh, that's not the same dude?
No, Vinnie Jones was him in The Last Stand. This was just some dude, but the costume design was meant to mimic.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, there you go. I haven't seen The Last Stand in so long.
There was a few actors who were like undisclosed or like, not big names who were playing like Lady Deathstrike and Psylocke and Azazel. Because they didn't want to pay Olivia Munn and like, people like that. But, no, I was really happy to see Wesley Snipes. And the biggest thing, obviously Gambit was a huge one because anyone who follows movie making and comic book film, development knows the whole story. I mean, and now it's now it's one of those like things where like maybe a regular person will see an article on social media about explaining why that cameo meant something. Yeah. But like, it's nice for all of us, to see it and go, oh, good for Channing Tatum. Like he finally got to play Gambit. And like, not that I would have watched an entire film with his portrayal of Gambit like this, with that silly accent. But to be fair, even listening to, even watching X-Men 97, like listening to Remy LeBeau talk, it's like, Lordy, like I know you're Cajun, but
do you have to be that Cajun?
Could you put a sock in it? Like, could you assimilate a little bit?
Right, sure.
Sound like an American. No, but like Remy LeBeau, I think just is one of those characters where it's like, look, good for the people of Louisiana, but it's a little silly to listen to, and maybe it's just because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Regardless. it worked for this movie because Deadpool keeps talking about how he
can
can't
call it out.
understand what the fuck he's saying.
Yep. So that was the only cameo that was spoiled for me.
Oh, okay.
And it literally happened 8 seconds before the theater went dark. I was scrolling on Instagram and I saw Channing Tatum's Instagram post, and it was like, big thanks to Ryan Reynolds for having me. And I was like, no, dadgummit, I'm 8 seconds from this movie starting, bro.
It was like at the end of a horror movie where like you look at your buddy, it's like, I think we made it, and like their eyes turn red. You're like, cut to black. That was you. You're like, no.
I was like, no. So like, why did I do this? I was like, this is stupid. But yeah, but I thought the cameos were good, and like I'm not a big fan of the Fox movies in general, but you know, it was cool to see, you know, those characters. I mean, sure. And it's good for them to get some closure and have, you know, a last opportunity to play them. So yeah, I think that was cool.
I had been spoiled on X-23. But that sort of made sense to me. Like I knew that Daphne Keane had been like denying she was in the movie like you're supposed to. Yeah. So I was just like, okay, well, it wouldn't surprise me if she wasn't in it, but I wouldn't be surprised if she popped up in it, because why wouldn't she? She's, you know, she's tight with Disney right now. And she was there and she was great. And, you know, she got to have some scenes, and she's doing that screaming, stabbing I love so much, from Logan. Yeah. I mean, like I was watching during that sequence, like watching everyone got their moments. Like Jennifer Garner got her moments as Elektra. Wesley Snipes, I don't know. I was thinking about this actively during his like featured action sequences. I was like, I know that much of the Blade choreography was controlled by him. And so I wondered, like, I was watching him fight and I was like, this looks like Wesley Snipes Blade stuff. Like because Marvel, you know, famously like, I wonder if he was like, shut the fuck up. Let me tell you how to do this. He's just like, I'm not doing any of that shit, you know? But
I was expecting a taxes joke at some point, and it never happened.
I wasn't expecting, but wasn't surprised to hear the reference to the motherfucker ice skating uphill.
That, and I did love when he was like, there's only one blade. There's only going to be one blade.
There's only ever going to be one, yeah.
And Deadpool just looks right at the camera.
That's right. Yeah, that was great. My favorite joke was for concerning Blade was he says something like, I don't like you, and Deadpool says, you never really did.
Never really did. Yeah. I liked that montage up front where he was going to all the different Wolverines throughout all the timelines. Mm-hmm. You know, the different costumes, the different like comic call outs, like those were cool.
The Crucifixion X.
Yeah. The short Wolverine.
That was funny.
Yeah. It looked a little off.
Yeah.
VFX wise, but it was fine.
It looked like a Super Bowl commercial.
It did. It had a weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't quite
uncanniness
work.
A little bit.
It didn't work in the skinny Steve Rogers kind of way. And then, but it could have been like, I think Hugh Jackman's head was just too big.
It was
or
big.
Something. There's something about it's like MODOK head. And then Henry Cavill, I thought was unexpected. I was like, what was the point of this?
I didn't know the significance of it, but when he said something like "get out," and I was like, you know, you wouldn't have been bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I didn't know the significance. I was like, maybe this is a fan cast or something.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it was probably just to make the joke about we'll treat you better than the guys down the street did.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the impetus for the joke.
Yeah.
And in which case it's hilarious that's, if that is the case, that would have been how Ryan got him to sign on.
Right. Yeah.
Would have been like, hey, we're going to make fun of DC.
We're going to take a shot at DC real quick.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Would you like to endorse it with your face?
Sure.
Yeah.
It'll cost you 4 hours of work. Okay.
Great.
It's fine.
It's great.
Yeah, but all that was cool. I think in terms of negatives, I didn't care for the alternate Deadpools. Like
Oh,
I
the
thought that
Deadpool
fight
core.
sequence was fine.
Yeah.
But I didn't like it. Should have been something else. It felt like a mini boss and a distraction to the actual climax of the film.
Right. Especially because they all get up and then Peter convinces them not to fight Deadpool and Wolverine. Because as soon as he says we don't have time for this, I was like, okay, here comes like a Deus Ex Machina. So yeah, structurally, I was the same way. I was like, that was really cool. I just wish that it was going to matter because I know at least most of them heal. So
right. What it could have been instead is Cassandra Nova sends, like sentinels or something through the portal, and like so it would have been something triggered by her as a means of distracting them from what she's going to do. Rather than what it felt like was just like, I don't know why they're attacking, but they are. And like that was unclear to me. Maybe there was a reason. It was unclear to me why they were attacking. And they were kind of like vaguely set up earlier, but not really. So it felt a lot like it was set up and the fight happened all in one sequence. And I was like, yeah, this is just like structurally a problem. But again, if it had been that she sent them, like if that had been clear.
Nice Pool says something about the Deadpool core when they first meet him. In the void. So it's mentioned earlier, but like it's not as much consequence other than like fan service and a cool action sequence. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to lose it because it was fun.
Because it was cool.
But I'm not going to pretend like it was a perfectly placed story beat because it was not.
Right. Well, that's where I would almost like replace it with all of the alternate Wolverines. And instead, like we've already seen them and set them up. So that then later when you fight them, it's like, we're mad because you came into our world and, whatever it is. But like, or just set up something like
I would have had tricked all the alternate Wolverines into killing the Deadpool core. And then, Deadpool and Wolverine just run away like, great, they're distracted, and just let it like a big old like Anchorman style brawl happen between all the yellow Wolverines and all the red Deadpools. And then our heroes run towards the climax of the film.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like, cool. This will take he can say something like, this will take hours. Let's go. Hurry.
Yeah. I just think I agree with you. I don't want to lose it. I want to rework it. So that structurally it makes sense. And the best way, again, I think you could do that is tie it to Cassandra's plan, which I want to talk about that too, because I've got 3 questions about the movie. One, the first question is, why does she let them go with a convenient sling ring, only to then still attack?
Right.
Why? So she had an opportunity to let them go, and she seems to have a change of heart when she says like, oh, my brother would have, like, there's the whole thing of like, your brother wouldn't want me to sit here and watch you. Okay, fine. Here's a sling ring. Get out of here. Almost in a save yourself from Goliath type of thing. Yeah. Only to then be like, and now I'm going to attack you. And it's like, well, why? You just let your opposition go knowing that they can attack you again in a minute. That doesn't. She learns of Paradox's plan from Pyro. Right. And so she's coming back. She's coming back to actually like capitalize on his plan rather than just, she's become aware of the bigger of the larger plot versus just having these 2 characters ruining what she has going on. So here's a rework. What if instead she says, y'all get out of here, save yourself from Goliath. They go through the thing, they do the thing. Oh, and then the portal closes and Pyro or somebody can be there and be like, why did you just let them go? Yeah. And she goes, oh, I didn't. I'm keeping them busy. And then she like alerts the Deadpool core where they're going to be. Yeah, that would have been much better. I'm keeping you busy so that I can now go do what I'm going to do. And yes, I could have just killed you. She's set up as like, she can kill you with a thought. So
Yeah.
it still wouldn't quite make sense because she would have just done that if her goal was still to kill them.
Sure.
She's clearly more powerful than they are. So she would have just done that, but okay, fine, whatever. At least that makes some logical sense. Like, I'm going to busy you while I go do something. But so there was that. Okay. I had two other questions. One, in the beginning of the film, I'm confused over which Deadpool we're seeing and when. So the film begins, like we said, with Logan, the film Logan. He's in that Fox world looking for Logan. Then it says something like Earth 616 6 years ago or something. And he's with Happy Hogan. Then it says Earth, 10005 or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm like, so is this two different Deadpools? Like, are we watching in the 616 Deadpool? Is that a different Deadpool who gets turned down from the Avengers? Because then they kind of reference it later.
No, he has at the end of this is where seeing the other films may have helped. So
Okay.
in Deadpool 2, Cable is a character. Cable has this time device. And at the end of the movie, Deadpool gets somebody to fix it. And so there's a whole, you may have seen the montage on YouTube or something, but then there's a whole montage where he just kind of goes back and fixes a lot of the problems that happen in the movie. And he does other things. Like, he goes into X-Men Origins Wolverine and murders his own character.
Okay.
He murders Ryan Reynolds before he can make Green Lantern. It's funny. You should check it out. But,
Okay.
there is, so he's wearing that during the interview with Happy, and the implication is that he time traveled into their universe to try to join the Avengers, or rather, I'm not sure how though he would go to a parallel place, but I think the implication is he's as soon as Fox bought Disney bought Fox, he was, I guess, at least eligible to interview with the Avengers. I took it as more of like a fourth wall logic. But considering he was time traveling and that's why the TVA kind of flagged him in the first place, that's how at least I understood it to be justified.
Okay, so maybe that makes more sense now, but I was confused through that whole movie. Like,
no, it's the same Deadpool, but what it is a little story convenient to get us to give him a reason to feel rejected and depressed.
Sure.
So it's a little shaky. I would have liked it to make more sense, but
so maybe you just rework that with a simple like opening scene of him in a waiting room with a bunch of other like heroes, like knockoff heroes from the multiverse, and Happy's interviewing a bunch of people from across the multiverse. Like, oh, Deadpool 10,005. You're up next.
Yeah.
And there's, like alternate Spider-Mans and alternate, like all the different things, like alternate just whatever's, all waiting for their chance to interview. Maybe that's just, I don't know, a way to make this film more self-contained. Cause I was confused. Okay. That makes more sense. The last question I have is, maybe I missed it. They very clearly said that Wolverine and Deadpool would not survive the ending of the film. And then they do. How do they do that?
You mean when Matthew McFadden explains?
Yeah, it's matter versus antimatter. You will cease to exist.
Oh.
And Cassandra Nova ceases to exist. And the implication is that they would as well. And it would be some grand sacrifice on their behalf. And then they just walk around the corner like they're fine.
To the Goo Goo Dolls.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's just plot armor. But
okay.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I could try to adjust it, but it's just one of those things where like, I don't know, do you want these characters to die? Like, which I was prepared for them just to both vaporize in there and, which would have been fine because we're saying goodbye to them anyway. But I guess just since it's a comedy, it might have rung as like faux dramatic.
Sure.
Instead of just like, no, it's cool. Like we did it. The idea being like that because they're sharing this, it's the Guardians of the Galaxy logic. Like we're sharing the burden of this immense power. So we're not going to get destroyed.
Okay.
At least that's as soon as he shows up and grabs his hand, I was like, oh, this is like the Guardians.
Yeah.
You know,
but I thought that was the plan from the beginning. Like I thought the plan was for them to tag team it, and then Paradox says you won't survive it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I was so confused. I was like, is there going to be a line to like even a comedic line? I don't care. Like I almost expected somebody to be like, how did you survive this? Even Paradox himself, like how could you possibly have survived that?
Sure.
And then like a quick flashback of, like a voiceover where he's like, well, you see, there was one atom left of each of us and we regenerated from the single atom.
Right.
Like whatever it is. And maybe that's absurd and whatever, but like a single atom of Deadpool survived and a single atom of Wolverine. And they just like, until they were back. But okay, fine, whatever. Something, give me some reason. It just felt like, oh, they're alive now, which was weird because it was as if everything was manipulating me to feel some sort of like, yeah, they both learned they're going to be self-sacrificial now. That's what they wanted. Like he always wanted to matter, and Wolverine, ran away from trouble, and they're both going to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. But then there's just no consequences to that. And like even in that sequence, it was like, we're doing this. We're going to die. No, don't do it alone. You'll die. I'll help you. Okay. Well, now we both die. Yeah. Oh no. Now neither of us even get scratched. Oh, okay, cool. Except Wolverine's shirt blows off, but that's it. But like, yeah, I don't know. That rang false to me.
I feel like the thing to do would have been for them to be like, how did you possibly survive? And for Deadpool to just say, oh, have you ever seen Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah.
I think if you hold hands, antimatter doesn't work or something.
Right. Or if he just says, have you ever seen a movie?
Yeah.
This is my movie.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I'm not dying in my movie.
Yeah.
No offense, Logan. What, like something like, again, it does. You don't even have to explain it. Just acknowledge it.
Sure.
But yeah. So, okay. So no explanation was given for that.
No, not that I recall.
Fine.
But I could have been staring at Hugh Jackman's abs and just not listened.
Somebody at work said it was funny that they treated the abs as a cameo reveal. It was like the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, look, it's fun. Those are questions. There are things that didn't work super well for me, but none of it brought it down to an I hate this level. Like oh geez, it's hiccups. It sounds like I'm trying not to vomit, trying to say something good about Deadpool.
Trying to compliment this film is making me ill.
In fact, Deadpool wasn't that bad. No, it wasn't that bad. It's fine plus, and that's cool. So there you go. I will say,
it's squared.
Yeah. Here's the truth. With all of the Fox movies, all of the non-Sony, non-Marvel movies, the standout character of all of them is Wolverine. Right.
Yeah.
And that is because of Hugh Jackman's performance.
Yeah.
He was given, like, the first half of this movie, very little to do dialogue wise, very little to do in terms of like beyond just being kind of like a detached, depressed guy.
Yeah.
And then there's this moment that he has with Daphne Keane around the campfire where I'm like, yo, this dude is giving 100% to this movie.
Yeah. Yep.
And then there's the sequence in the car, the fight between them in the car, which actually precedes that scene.
Right.
And I was like, this man is a national treasure and should always be Wolverine. And I know this is another convenient end for him, but it's going to be really sad to see somebody else play that role, because that dude is so good. And say what you will about the rest of this movie and about any other performance that you want, even though I don't think there's any bad performances here. Say anything you want about any of these things, but Hugh Jackman is the standout of this film.
Yeah.
And the moment that Cassandra Nova goes into his mind and you see the pain that Logan carries, Hugh Jackman sells that, and he always sells Logan's pain well.
Yeah.
But this is a different pain, and somehow it still reads as Logan, but also like a different Logan. Like this is a cowardly, broken Logan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting take on that character, and Hugh Jackman does it perfectly. And so yeah, I couldn't end the review without saying special laurels go to Hugh Jackman, because the dude cares, and it would have been really easy to phone this in.
Yeah.
And it would have been really easy for Ryan Reynolds to use his connection to Hugh Jackman to sell a movie that doesn't really have anything to do with Hugh Jackman.
Sure. Yeah.
Like we've seen that before, and it would have been very easy for this to not actually have much Wolverine in it. But the fact that it not only has a lot of Wolverine, but has a really clear arc for Wolverine is commendable. So big special shout out to Hugh Jackman, because he's great.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about ComicCon?
Sure.
Not too much that I'm aware of from that. I watched some like Marvel panel recap real quick of some stuff. But I mean, the big stuff made like the news and everything. So of course the big news that happened prior to Comic-Con, but like, whatever, was the whole, actually, I guess it wasn't official until Comic-Con, but anyway, there was the, reportedly the Russos were talking to Kevin Feige about directing these two Avengers movies. And I guess now it's official. They are, and they've been reworked. I mean, they've been reworked to be Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. And they had always said that the only thing they would come back for, that they'd consider coming back for, Secret Wars. And so way back when it was someone else's job, that one, as soon as they revealed it was going to be Secret Wars, which I feel like was a while back, it was the first one, Kang Dynasty, that was going to get the major rework. But I think even people were saying, like, how are you going to do Secret Wars and a Fantastic Four movie, but not have like Doctor Doom show up,
Right.
And so now that they've changed it, now it's going to be about Doctor Doom. It's like, okay, great. That makes way more sense. And now we've got the Russos back. So how do you feel about the Russos coming back?
I think that's a good thing.
Yes.
They are clearly the standout from the Infinity Saga in terms of direction.
Yeah.
For that, right? Like James Gunn is his own thing.
Yeah.
But like in terms of the actual directing of, core Avengers movies.
Yeah.
That they're the go-to. And I think there's no reason in the world to not want them back.
Yeah. The only negative I'll point out of them coming back is it's kind of disheartening that the only people who can successfully, I mean, we'll see, but who could be trusted to helm these two Avengers movies is these two brothers. Like no one else is either up to it or has the clout to push for good creative decisions. So there's a part of me that's like, oh, it's kind of sad that this is really the only logical choice. That being said, I love the Russos. I love Winter Soldier and Civil War and Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame. And every time I listen to the Russos talk about their process or their approach to the characters, I've always thought that they were spot on and perfectly balanced in their approach to, franchise filmmaking and these characters and everything. So I feel like it's a great choice. It's definitely the smart money choice. It's kind of like when Joe Biden stepped off the ticket and like all the campaign donors returned. It's like, now we got fresh injections, and it's like, that's how I feel like it is with the fans like me. It's like the Russos are back, and you're like, oh, cool. Oh. I'm interested again, because not only does them directing these films make me feel like the films will be good, but obviously they have to coordinate with the people who are making the films that lead up to it and have some input. Yeah. And I feel like they're very good voice. They're the right people to be saying, okay, well, you're working towards this now for our film. Yeah. And I don't know why only Stephen McFeely is coming back. I don't know why Marcus isn't, but whatever. The point is, I'm glad that it's culminating with these people because I trust these people.
Yeah. I think the next two Avengers films were totally up for grabs at some point, and Marvel. It's weird to say it this way, but like directing a solo Marvel movie is in a weird way your audition to direct an Avengers film. And it was up for grabs, and nobody rose to the occasion. And that's not to say that there was nobody who could have done it, right? But it is to say that the folks that they hired to work Phase 4, that nobody rose to the top. No, nobody. They could have. And there are some names that could have. I think
I heard it was offered to Sean Levy.
Oh, really?
Okay. I think the director of this film, and for whatever reason, he was like,
nah,
nope.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And again, there just wasn't anybody else to no other standout. So
no, this phase, again, there was Destin Daniel Cretton who dropped out of it, but then there's John Watts who stepped out of Fantastic Four already, Sam Raimi, Taika Waititi, Ryan Coogler, Chloe Zhao, Kate Shortland, but then Peyton Reed, Nia DaCosta, and then everyone else beyond that, like there's no time. And it's just like these people I've never heard of, like Julius Ona for Captain America 4, Jake Schreier. I don't there wasn't any names without bringing in a completely new set of people who wouldn't be able to help lead into anything. Like at least with Infinity War and Endgame, these guys directed Winter Soldier and earned a third Captain America movie. And I think it was sometime in with Civil War, in the post of Civil War, that they and Marvel talked and were like, you guys should be doing the Avengers films.
Yep.
And
they did. And the rest is history. I had heard a rumor that it was offered to Sam Raimi. And that he had turned it down. I don't know if that's true or not. And I had heard too, again, this is all like rumors and, probably untrue, but like there was some talk of like giving it to Sam allowed for Toby to come back and Sam to reunite with Toby to sort of continue some version of that. And that was interesting to Sam, but then, it just didn't work out. I don't know if any of that's true.
Sure.
That to me, of all the people that directed a Phase 4 film, that's the most likely candidate.
Sure.
But again, he doesn't need it.
And I'm not even sure he's the right tone.
I don't think so. If I were Feige, I would absolutely be calling the Russos back.
I would too. And part of what well, I'll say this part in a minute, but yeah, I would have been calling the Russo. I would have been calling the Russos. And I feel like at some point I must have at least suggested on this show that they should just do that. But
Yeah.
I certainly felt it at a certain point, but
Yeah.
I mean, assumed obviously like, well, they're done. So that's just kind of a pipe dream.
Yeah.
But then I found out today they're being paid like $80 million or something crazy.
Oh,
A lot of money.
yeah.
So,
Sounds about right.
yeah. All right. So the other big news concerning Marvel.
Speaking of $80 million.
Speaking of lots of money and
Yeah.
smart business decisions,
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. is returning, and he is returning to play Victor Von Doom, not Tony Stark.
Yep.
I figured him returning in. There was a part of me that thought that he might show up in this film, like briefly. The reason I thought that was because lately I was always afraid after he bowed out that Marvel, especially when the film started doing poorly, I thought Marvel's going to call him again. Like, it's sad that this one actor has so much influence over whether the material is good. I was afraid that they would bring him back and they would just undo Tony Stark's death. But then a couple weeks ago, there was some soundbite that I saw in a headline from Kevin Feige, and he basically had said like Deadpool, like, the success of bringing Hugh Jackman back with Deadpool and Wolverine does open the door for things like Tony Stark or something like that. And I remember thinking like, okay. And then I had already seen Robert Downey Jr. answer a question in an interview. Like, someone asked him, Jodie Foster asked him, would you ever go back? And he said, without hesitation, he said, yes. Because it's too big a part of who I am now. Yeah. And basically, and I love all those people, and it was a great experience. And like, so like I would, so even knowing all that, it was still a surprise to me that he's being cast as this other character, this villain, so there's a whole lot of things. There's a lot of memes of people like, it's going to be heartbreaking for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to look at Victor Von Doom and see the face of his mentor. Like, that's obviously going to have to occur to him.
Yeah.
Like how, and so I can't remember what I read, but all I know about the significance of that casting choice as it relates to the comics is that in some comic, Iron Man dies and Dr. Doom like takes over the Iron Man mantle or something. Like that was somebody saying there's some connection between those two.
Sure.
So I will be eager to understand the logic behind this other than business. Yep. I'm sure there is a good one. Otherwise, the Russos wouldn't have reached out. Yep. And Robert Downey Jr. sure as hell wouldn't have said yes. Yeah. I know the guy, probably likes money, but he's got so much of it. And it was such a lasting legacy of Tony Stark. So the fact that the Russos are directing and Robert Downey Jr. is coming back for this idea that right now is kind of silly and crazy and unexplainable. And for most of what I've read online, no one's happy about it because everyone feels like it's either cheap or doesn't understand it. Yeah. That's why I feel like, okay, there's got to be a good reason, because everyone, when Heath Ledger got cast as the Joker, like this happens all the time. Like casting decisions are made and people are like, this is horrible. There was a comment I screen grabbed today from the comment section during all this dissent. And some guy said, yeah, I can't believe Kevin Feige didn't wait to ask all these people who haven't made $1 billion movies what they thought.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't understand it, but I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, to me, my first thought was, yeesh, that's desperate.
Right.
But I also looked at it like, okay, there's a couple different things. One, he is playing Victor Von Doom. At least that's how they have
they surely have anticipated this reaction.
Yes.
And decided it was worth it.
So I was talking to John about it, and I was like, what we came up with was the most likely scenario is he is a variant of Tony Stark, in much in the same way that Kang and Victor Quietly are variants with different names, same faces.
Yeah.
That this Victor Von Doom is different name, same face to Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And whatever multiverse he's come from, there is no Tony Stark.
Yeah.
He is the only Stark, like the Starkest thing in his universe. And so you pluck him from the multiverse, he just happens to look like Tony.
Yeah.
Now, if that's the way they go, which to me seems the most likely way to go, because I guess the alternative is he just looks like Tony and no one mentions it.
Which would seem strange.
But it's also strange to do it this way because now you're calling attention to something that doesn't matter. Because if he's Tony, but not Tony, it's like he's still Tony. He's just named Victor Von Doom.
Yeah.
Then when he comes in and you have your tearful reunion with Tom Holland Spider-Man,
Right.
it's going to be like, but why are we calling attention to this? Because it means nothing to Doom that he looks like Stark. And it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't serve any
unless he's
purpose.
unless he's aware.
Sure.
Unless he's aware of who Tony Stark is and his resemblance to him, and he uses that to his advantage somehow. Don't know why, don't know how.
Yeah.
But I definitely, from a like other than like, you know, marketing and stuff like that, like it definitely makes it interesting that the audience and the Avengers, some of them have a connection with this face already.
Sure.
You know, which is part of what makes most of Spider-Man's villains so good, is that they're people he knows in his personal life. So it's almost cool that this isn't just some, even though it's like Doctor Doom, it's not some like new bad guy to them who's going to like destroy the universe or whatever. It's like, oh, and he looks like our friend. Like it is an extra layer of, you know, personal, emotional baggage, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to hear the story lot. And the problem is we're not going to hear about it until like for another year, at least, when we see some trailer. But I want to know what the logic is behind it, for sure.
My thought is it'll play in a trailer. Like you see Robert Downey Jr. And he won't have the signature Tony Stark facial hair or whatever. It won't have the hair. It'll be something different. And somebody will say, Stark, you know, and it'll be the trailer line where he turns around and he's like, you know, I'm not Stark. And like, that's the trailer. And it'll be like a whole thing about that. Or the alternative is I could also like story wise see them going here, but I don't think they would ever do this business wise. And story wise, you could avoid all of this by having Doom never take his mask off. Now I'm not super familiar with the character in the comics. I haven't read a lot of Doom comics, but as far as I know, he very rarely takes that mask off in the comics.
Right.
So you could always just have Robert Downey Jr. playing that character with the mask on the entire time, except for maybe one scene, right? So this is a possibility. And then you don't have to necessarily bring that up, especially if the one scene isn't where he's in like close proximity with characters who would have known Tony. Like if you see him without the mask when he's by himself, then you don't necessarily have to call attention to it. Or if you just never see him without the mask. The problem with this is then you can't put Downey Jr.'s face on the posters and you can't sell the trailers with his face on them.
Right.
His name will be there, but that's it.
Yeah.
And I don't think they would do that.
No.
So I don't think that's a real option. I think story-wise it could be, but I don't think that's a real option. So I think the most likely scenario here is, again, he's some sort of multiversal variant of Tony Stark, just happens to be named Victor Von Doom, but he's every bit as smart and resourceful as Stark. And I think to add credence to this is when Downey Jr. posted about this on Instagram, he captioned it "New mask, same task."
Right.
Which to me signifies, I guess, I'm still doing Stark's mission. It's just I'm going to be sinister about it. It's like a different take on what Stark did. So what did Stark do? Well, he was always pushing technology forward, but he was also trying to, provide a better world through that technology, whether it's Ultron or whatever.
Yeah.
But this may be just a version of Stark named Victor Von Doom who wants all the same things Tony did, but is going about them in a much more nefarious way and embracing the weaponry and embracing, I'm going to give all of these superpowers weapons so that they can fight each other. I'm not taking weapons away. I'm giving weapons. I'm also not too worried about the fact that Ultron's a jerk. I'm cool with that. Whatever it is, I could totally see them doing that. But I don't know. It's interesting. Right now, it's just too much of a question mark for me to be excited about it. But it's also not. It's also doesn't make me angry because, again, there's just no information.
I'm certainly eager to learn more about it. I'm ready to accept it, but I'd be lying if I were to sit here and be like, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's going to work. It's like, we don't know the plot and we don't know the reasons,
I saw some meme earlier that was like, here's your first look at Marvel Phase 10. And it was all the Avengers, but they all had Downey Jr.'s face.
Yeah.
It was Downey Jr. as every character.
Yeah. There's people making Black Panther jokes with the Tropic Thunder face. And it's, you're right. I mean, they're right. It's kind of crazy. So it's very, they're going to endure at least several months of people just thinking that that's a silly choice, which had to have been anticipated.
Yeah.
So,
and again, to go back to our last point, I trust that the Russos understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the way that it would be perceived and have crafted something that enticed Downey Jr., who, let me just remind everybody, regardless of how you feel about the casting, Downey Jr. is a talented dude.
Yeah.
And can also make things work.
Yeah.
Because he's a talented dude.
If he were told, hey, we know that this script kind of sucks, but we really need you on the poster so we can resurrect this franchise, would you do us a solid? He would have been like, no, that sounds like it's going to fuck up my integrity and everything. I don't want to do that. Downey Jr. will remind, and his representation will remind studios of his worth, like with Civil War, you're going to give Mr. Downey back end points on this if it crosses such and such threshold because of his casting. But he's not going to, I don't see him doing things just for money. I mean, I know people like money, but he's got so much of it and it's just, I don't see him. I think he has more integrity than that. I'm not cynical about his motivations,
Right. If he is the main villain of Doomsday and presumably appears in Fantastic Four and presumably a major player in Secret Wars, if he's doing all that, regardless of the amount of money, that is a lot of work. That's a lot of months and months and years of work that he's going to have to, that he's now going to have to do all of that again.
Yep.
I don't think he would sign on just for the money at this point.
Yeah. If it was if it had been a silly single scene cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine, I could see him at least saying, this isn't going to take up much of my time. I'm not going to be doing any press and it'll be just kind of fun for me.
Yep.
Then yeah. But you're right. To sign up for several years of filmmaking and press junkets and ComicCons.
Yep.
And the pressure of having to deliver on another significant character.
Yep.
After having delivered on another significant character, every one of these people are smart and knows how this looks.
Right.
They are more motivated than anybody for it to work.
Yes. Let's put it in context of Michael Jordan exited the game on top.
Yeah. Yeah.
He came back to play for the Wizards. And I don't think he did that just for the money. He did it because he loved the game.
Yeah.
And now we also know that didn't work out well for him. The Wizards didn't amount to much. This could be the same thing, or it could be the opposite story where this is his second career with the this is Downey Jr.'s second career with the Wizards, and it really, really works. So that's what we're hoping for. But again, I think it has to be for the love of the game that he's back.
No, I agree. I've got a little more faith in it than other people do.
Sure.
It definitely makes me excited, which I haven't been. So I wasn't like, other than this movie, and just because I knew I would have fun watching it, I haven't really been excited for anything else. Like, ComicCon always helps with that. I mean, we've got a trailer for Captain America. There's a couple of cool things in there. Not like super hyped for it, but like, oh, great. Like, there's some stuff. We have nothing from Thunderbolts other than positive stuff from ComicCon. And Fantastic Four, honestly, like, cool. It's just, I'm not excited for that right now. And it's only just because I don't care for stuff set in the past. I don't like prequel stuff. And so I just feel automatically low stakes about the movie, even though I know it's going to be huge. Like I know I'll see a trailer and I'll probably see the film and I'll feel completely different about it. But I'm just being honest right now. It's like, okay, I'm sure it'll be great. I gotta say, I never think about it.
Yeah. I watched the footage from Comic-Con and
okay. I haven't seen it.
Okay. It's fine. Bear in mind, like, nothing's been shot yet.
Right.
So what they screened, as far as from what I understand, nothing's been shot yet. What they screened was test footage. It's like what they used to sell it to Feige and, like, sell the casting essentially. So it was all like, whatever, but like, it's not indicative of what we're going to get. But yeah, I mean, it could be fine. They're calling it First Steps now. Fantastic Four First Steps. Right.
Not a strong title.
Does not roll off the tongue.
No. Fantastic Four First Steps.
How about just Fantastic Four?
Not just the Fantastic Four. Yeah.
You know what everyone's going to call it when they ask for the ticket at 2:30 p.m.?
Exactly.
They say, can I get 2 tickets for Fantastic Four?
All that to say, like, it makes me like feel positive about what we're getting. And we're not like, I mean, we are kind of super far away from it in that we're 2 years away from this first film, but it's not like we're 4 years away or 5 years or whatever when we previously had directors in place for Avengers films. So I'm excited that I'm yay, like, okay, cool. We finally know what we're doing. Can we go, please? Like,
let's just do the thing.
Go get it done? So right. So great. We have a direction. Let's go. I don't know what movies will be added to the schedule in phase 6. Because they've got 2 release dates in right now we've got 2 movies coming out next year for this phase with Captain America and Thunderbolts. And then late in the summer, phase 6 starts and it's Fantastic Four. And then we got this Blade release date in November. I'm pretty sure that's going to get moved back. And then nothing's on the docket for 2026 or 2027 except for these 2 Avengers films. I'm sure that somewhere in there, there's going to be there has to be another Spider-Man film and, stuff like that. Because there's all these other like untitled sequel on, Armor Wars and the Shang-Chi movie and some X-Men film. And it's like, I would think at least somewhere in there you'd get Spider-Man and the X-Men, if you want to feature those characters in Secret Wars.
Sure. I assume they will, at least Spider-Man, but I also have heard Tom Holland say, we understand the pressure and like the expectation of following No Way Home. So he's like, we're not going to do it till we get it right. And I'm like, well, that's fine. But all the clock's ticking and all the other things.
I can also see them waiting until after Secret Wars to start doing the X-Men. Like that's how we're going to sell people on phase 7 or whatever. It's like, what do you do after Secret Wars? It's like, well, now we've got the X-Men.
Yeah. Which they arguably should have done already.
They should have done it already, and it shouldn't have, because now it's going to be like a Captain Marvel situation where like we might get an X-Men film in between Avengers movies, and then we're going to just shove them into this movie with all these other characters where they're going to get lost. And it's like, maybe we just wait till after Secret Wars to start. Right. But you're right. It should have been done already. And this is all assuming that nothing's been decided. It could very well be all these motherfuckers have been cast already and we just don't know it. Like they might have shot half the movie and it's coming out next year and they just didn't announce it. But ComicCon just happened. This would have been the time to say, by the way, business wise, you need to announce a release date. So, anyways, so, we'll see. But, it wouldn't surprise me to see Spider-Man pop up on the schedule before Doomsday.
I think it'll have to.
Yeah. Especially if Blade doesn't work out and there's a November slot they already have. It's like, yeah, we don't need Blade in Secret Wars, but Spider-Man obviously needs to be in Secret Wars. So
I also think they'll do a street level Spider-Man, and they'll bring in Daredevil in some capacity to that.
Yeah, totally.
And maybe Punisher, but like I think it'll be that level of character.
Yeah, it can't be, which will be a little strange following No Way Home with such like a relatively smaller scale thing, but it's not like it's a trilogy capper. It's the 4th movie, and that's where the character is right now. He's starting over.
Yep.
You know, and he's in a different place, and there's other shit going on.
Yep.
Or I guess less shit going on, you know.
Sure.
Interesting stuff.
See. Yeah. It's funny. 2 weeks ago, the MCU was the least interesting thing I could possibly think about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now there's possibilities.
And now it's fun again. Yeah. It's like amazing how things can change.
Yep.
Thank God. Because this was half the fun of the Infinity Saga to begin with was
where are they going?
Where are they going? And you know, and speculating. And it's like, this is the fun part. We're in the fun stretch where we're like a phase and a half from Avengers films and phase cappers.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yep.
This is where it gets good.
Yep, for sure.
Wee. All right.
Wee.
Okay, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hey,